The Brazilian Shirt Name Podcast with Dotun Adebay and Tim Vickery.
Yeah, and we are talking football this time around with a proper legend of the broadcasting game, certainly. We'll come to Guillem Balagué in just a second, but let me just remind you to like and subscribe to this channel and to tell everybody about it that you know. Also, do remember that tomorrow we'll have an interactive conversation with you, the Global Soccer Interactive, from the same time, 4 p.m., etc. And what else should I be telling everybody, Tim?
Like, subscribe, and without further to-do, let's get on with it.
Yeah, well, Guillem, you obviously know more than we do what we're supposed to say. Go on then. You subscribed.
I just subscribed on Spotify because I had you somewhere else, but not in here. So there you are.
Well, there are lots of ways to listen to us. What a real pleasure it is to have you on, because, you know, for those who don't know, and I'm not going to big you up too much, but you deserve this.
You can.
Well, there might be one who doesn't know, but there won't be many.
There won't be, you're right. Not if you've followed Spanish football at the very least, because Guillem is the person that broke it down for a lot of us. I'm not saying you're the only, Spanish football correspondent that people might know, but nevertheless, for me, you were the guy on TV that kind of explained what was going on in La Liga, etc. Now you've come out with a book that might surprise some people. The Rise of the Villans. We know who the villains are. They've always been villains as far as I know. Yeah, and that includes the next Prince or King of England. Yeah, whatever.
Well, there were certainly villains on Sunday, but the less said about that, the better.
I thought Tottenham were the villains on Sunday. Flipping out. Do you know how much you nicked money from hard-working people in North London to go and lose to the villains? Anyway, Guillem Balagué, welcome to the Brazilian Shirt Name Podcast. So, this book is a biography, isn't it, of Unai Emery? An enigma for many people, not least people on the other side of North London.
Yeah, it really is two books, and I got this. I found this way to call them both that I'm so proud about that I'm going to tell you, because I spent with Aston Villa a whole year, just coming in any time to the training ground. At the beginning, the first few weeks, I would just be in the hall, just waiting for somebody to pick me up or talk to. This is Unai Emery or his assistants or the players or people behind the scenes. Within 2 months, I had my own table in the canteen, and people just pass by. I will grab them, and conversations took place. But when you've got a whole year of conversations about Aston Villa, a lot of the people in there I have known for a long time, and of course there were many keen to tell their story. These are people that generally are not in books, like the head of cuisine or the player liaison or even the head of communications. So I got so much stuff in that I decided to part it in two ways. The first part is a biography of Unai Emery. As you say, there's a bit of an enigma attached to it. That part I call The Lion, related to the crest of Aston Villa, of course. And the second part is a picture of Aston Villa right now, because once I decided to do a book on Unai Emery and he decided to collaborate, I realized that the story was Aston Villa as well, that what was happening there, them trying to sit in the table of the top six and to do it in a way that is not about pushing a lot of money. They've got the money, but they're not allowed because of financial fair play and so on. So how is it that they did it? And how is it that they can still manage to be consistently in the top teams in Europe, really? And that I call the pride, which is, of course, the pride of the club or a group of lions. So I'm very proud of how I called the two parts, but it clearly was two separate directions of the book. So the first part tells you the origins of Unai, how he thinks, his methodology, and fascinatingly enough, how being at the top, having been at Arsenal, at PSG, he decides to change everything. Try to do that when you are at the top of the game. Not easy, but it has to be a really strong reason for it and have enough passion to then become really, really good in whatever else you decide to do, positional game in his case. And as I said, the second part, it tells you behind the scenes how all this gets put together. And oh my God, there's so much work in it. But yeah, that's the book in a nutshell.
Yeah, Tim, as proud as Guillem is of his pride, I would suggest he's even a little bit modest, because the way that I read it, in the way that he's done the book, have you ever seen Citizen Kane?
Oh, yes. Well,
Well,
what a start for a comparison.
I'm trying
yeah.
to think now of Rosebud in a Midlands accent.
Well, it's not Rosebud in a Midlands accent, but it is good evening. Okay, we've got rid of the xenophobia, Guillem. I know most people would know Unai Emery. He's got an accent, Spanish V's and B's, Nabemba and everything. It's interchangeable. But you do start off saying that he was so, if you like, his sense of humour was so good that he thought that he'd even get a T-shirt saying "Good evening." So it's the enigma of the good evening that you start with, and then just like Guillem says, you start off by trying to put together a biography of this person by talking to different people in that person's life and bringing it all round. Then you try to figure out, well, what's this all about? How profound is this for, at the time, the United States at the time? And in your respect, how profound is it for Aston Villa?
It's a huge comparison. I'll take one thing also from Citizen Kane, is that the angle of the camera was completely new, and he made just people bigger or smaller depending where he placed the camera. And I tried modestly to actually look at both the person and the club from a different angle. It's not usual football books, like the other 10 are not usual football books. They don't. I don't talk about football. I talk about people, and where do these people come from, and why do they act the way they act. And that is that. That is, I always look at books to surprise the reader a little bit, to just take them in a different direction, to tell them very earlier on what the book is about, and to actually describe a football game and the preparation of a football game, like a mandala, for instance, from the Tibetan monks. It's another way of saying you're not opening the pages to a just normal book. I'm actually going to go really deep into the story of this guy and the moment of this club. And there was that good evening situation that was not only xenophobic, and there still remains of it, but not so many, because now he says the V properly, so it stops those having to trying to have a go. But it was xenophobic, and there was a mixture of, yes, I'm gonna own this joke, but there was heard as well that he was actually speaking in another language, making a real effort to try to communicate in another language, and was laughed at. So the way to own it is not only to actually have good evening t-shirt, it's to actually copyright it. He thought about copyrighted good evening with B. Decided against it, but was one of the many ideas that go through his very busy head.
There's something here that I would really want to get into, which is, all right, it's common enough to coach a team in a second language. No, I've met people, certainly some Brazilian coaches, who are very reticent to do it. To write books in a second language, my God! And I do columns in Portuguese, 600 words, and actually a lot, pal. What, you're doing 120,000 or something like that? And I think, and this is the linguistic arrogance of the English, it's just taken for granted that all of this output that you do, and I think personally, I think the written word is much more difficult than broadcasting. How on earth do you do this? Well, Unai and his, that's one thing, but you have to construct arguments, sentences, you have to do this in a second language. And I think that's taken for granted. And how on earth do you do it?
It's an interesting discussion, or Tim, and I haven't spoken about it properly, as in having had 11 books out
because
there.
Everyone takes it for granted. Oh yeah, he's got another book.
Maybe,
out.
yeah.
No,
yeah. But it's interesting for those that have started writing or from different cultures and so on, because the first book, A Season on the Brink, on Liverpool, I wrote it in Spanish, got a translator, and edited myself, and then it had to be put in 2 months, and that was it. So I thought this could work if I've got a translator that I trust, and then I can edit it. So it's like basically writing and editing your own book, but fine. And then I did the Pep Guardiola book, Another Way of Winning, and I did it in English on this occasion. And then, because it was every single book I've written has been published first in English, and Orion have been the publishers that they had them all out, including the authorized biography of Messi, first in English. So I did it in English. I got people to edit it, and I worked with the editing. But then the book was translated into Catalan and Spanish, 2 languages I speak. And what happened was it was destroyed. It was completely taken apart. It was just another book. And it was done by a translator who didn't understand football. So the expressions were taken aside, and we just converted into something else. So I had to spend 3 months translating my own book. So since then, what I did was, okay, I'm gonna basically have a translator, and I'm gonna work with the translator. We're gonna work together. So I write it in English. Sometimes, for instance, the Messi one is the exception one because I wanted his dad and his brother to read it. So I wrote it in Spanish, and then I helped the translator. And in this particular occasion, even though I knew that I wanted Unai to read it, it's an authorized book again, the club to read it, Damià Vidagain, who's the CEO, to read it. I did it all in English, and I've caught one of the phases of editing a book with artificial intelligence. This is the first time I use this. So I'm writing in the best English I can, and then paragraph by paragraph, I put it on artificial intelligence, and it says, can you improve it? And I'd say 50% of the time suggested things, a different order of a word, or of a sentence, or a new word that would make it better. But I was the editor. I was the one, concluding if that was a good idea or not. So I had 2 people doing that job. Now it's in artificial intelligence. So when I'm writing at 4 o'clock in the morning and my editor is in bed, as he should be, is the AI that helps me there. And then once I've had it all put together, then I get a proofreader that is editing from the publishers, the club reader, etc. So different phases, but now I've gone very modern in the way I write the book now.
Yeah, as fascinating as the literary process is, and usually I'm the one who brings that in because I've got nothing else to say sometimes, but as fascinating as that is, it's the subject matter that is important here. And all the books you've alluded to already, you've written books about key figures in football, whether it be Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi, or Pep Guardiola, as you've mentioned, Mauricio Pochettino. You've written a book about him as well. You seem to have this duality about, I'm going to write a book which is a generic book on a moment in football, but also focused on this one particular person to navigate your way through it. That's as far as the process is concerned. With Unai Emery, it's really interesting because the more you read this book, the less you feel you know about Unai Emery. You give us so much information, why it makes sense for him to be at Aston Villa as a coach, why he was able to renew himself there, why possibly Arsenal was generally in terms of his career, in terms of his philosophy, etc. Arsenal was the oddest place of all the places he's been manager of. He's managed Villarreal, as we know, amongst other things. But Arsenal seems to be the anomaly because this is a man who is rooted in working class Basque culture. His father was a goalkeeper. His grandfather, I think, was the person that brought the family when he had been migrated over to this part of the Basque region, that brought the family into the football firmament, as it were. But he's from a background of working class, solid footballing roots, from a small town where everybody knows everybody. And they wait for the moments when he comes back from his world conquest and comes back to visit, which he does, and he loves to be there. He's coach where I can totally see the fit with Aston Villa, and arguably, and as you often talk about, Tim, about working class roots of Liverpool, for example. I could see him going on to that, but I won't say that just yet because Villans might be watching, and you know what they're like. How important, though, is those roots to the philosophy or the reimagining of his philosophy that he's carrying out currently at Aston Villa?
So I kind of agree, but also disagree on the picture you just painted, because you're absolutely right. He knows he's a part of a bigger thing as a coach. That comes from his education. An education in the Basque Country that has got his own language, his own culture, respect of the eldest, traditionalists, people that are very close to sports, who are very competitive, who have made a lot out of not very good land to do a lot with, and who've done it collectively. So all that they carry, all the Basque managers carry that with them. From Iraola to Mikel Arteta to Paco Ayestarán, who's his assistant, to Lillo, who's the assistant of Pep Guardiola, to Jure Lopetegui, to himself, to Unai Emery. They've got that. So he fits in very well in a structure that has got a boss or an owner, a director of football, and he knows his role. The thing that happened, and he carries that with him, and it fits very well because he molds himself to whatever that is. But at Arsenal, it wasn't so much that he didn't feed the essence of the club or the history or the politics of the club. It was just that he was on his own. He was abandoned. There was a lot of things to do in the post-Wenger era, and there wasn't enough people to do it. And perhaps there wasn't even a clear path of where they all had to go. The CEO, the director of football, the manager. There wasn't the key of Manchester City is that they all think the same. They all think the same way. They don't need to talk to themselves why they lost, why they drew, why they won. They all know it because they are there thinking the same way. That didn't happen at Arsenal. But Arsenal and the problems at Arsenal helped with his progression because now, after that, he knew two things. One, that if he was going to go, or when he was going to go back to the Premier League, he would be protected. He will come with his people and it's like, right, this is how a club gets run. I know. I've been at places that gets run properly, others that don't. Now I know how it works. So he brought Tamia Vidagan, who is this CEO bridge, cultural bridge between the Spanish and the English, and the oil that makes the machine function. A director of football, that's now Roberto Olave, but used to be Monchi. And he's been lucky to find an owner that in the first meeting that they had in Jorge Mendes' house, he literally got a page from a notebook, a blank page that says, this is the club, do whatever you want with it. So then he goes, okay, this is what I'm going to be doing. So, and he has worked. Mendes will say, but that's his project. And this is an accusation that as soon as they start losing, he will come. That's his project. So what happens when he goes? Or what happens if he gets the sack? Because it's all about him. And what he's doing in that club is systematizing, is that a word? Make systems function.
I'm just going to check my AI. Sorry, I'm just going to check with my AI. Yeah, apparently you can
check it out.
With it. Well, you can improve on it.
He's basically putting the process in place for whoever comes next, and he has to do right. This is how we've worked. This is what it has worked. We maximizing the potential of the side. If I go or whenever I have to go, then somebody else has to come in of this profile and leave Aston Villa more or less in the same place. But yeah, the roots, going back to the question, the roots are absolutely crucial. And the older he's getting, and we all the same, the closer he's going back to his roots and feeling his roots and going to his family and going to get the plane and going to Hondarribia and seeing his friends and meeting his friends for dinner and singing Basque songs and then walking in the beach that he've always been swimming in, and that kind of thing that takes us back. Okay, so we've been working for 40 years. I think the three of us will recognize this. Now, should we go back to a place where we don't have to explain anything, where everything feels natural and where we feel rooted? Yeah.
Indeed. Yeah. I have probably two questions coming off that. One is about you, and how on earth has English football managed to kidnap Guillem Balagué at a time when developments in Spanish football have been so interesting? So that's question one. And question two, the incredible dynamic of Spanish football, which obviously has lots of regional components and so on, but there is some seems to be some hole. I mean, it was 25, nearly 30 years ago. The great Uruguayan coach Oscar Washington Tabárez was at Oviedo for a couple of years, and he would say recently, no, then Spain didn't have anything like the football culture that it has now. So, first, how has English football kidnapped you? And second, how can we explain this extraordinary dynamic in the football culture of Spain?
Well, I'm not passionate about football. Never been, never will be. But I'm a storyteller, and I was allowed to tell stories about Spanish football in the early ages. You know, when I started in Sky in 1997, I had been the correspondent of Don Balón, a famous magazine at the time. That was my first introduction to football, and then through in English talking about Spanish football, other things came up, especially when you're on television for whatever 97 to still now. It opens up all the worlds. It allows you to talk about English football or European football, and then you can tag yourself whatever way you want. I decided, I decided to go back to Spanish media and tell the stories that were being told in a different way, because I felt that being in the outside, I could talk about racism in Spain in a different way. I could talk about, I'm a manager's writer, if you like, so I'm not a lot of managers, and that's how you get more of the stories or the bigger picture. So I could tell that story of whatever's happening at the time from a different angle. And then in January last year, I decided to leave Spanish media. It's like, never again. I don't fit in. Whatever I bring in, I don't shout enough, I don't argue enough, I don't, that they couldn't place me. So I needed to have a flag, as we say. I needed to have a flag of a team. I needed to be the Barcelona guy or the Real Madrid guy, or I'm an Espanyol fan or Beagles or United fan. Nobody cares about these two clubs. So, and I didn't want to be that guy. So I left it. I left everything to do with Spanish media and went back. And since then, continue telling the story of both the Premier League, the Spanish League, football in general, any story that I get hold of in English. And I know, there will be the chance to go back to Spain if I wanted to. But all I did it was so my mother could watch me or read me, because she doesn't speak or read English. And I had to tell her, this is what I'm doing. This video you just got, this is what I'm talking about. So it's double the effort. But then I realized that, I prefer to tell my mother what I'm doing. So that's the first thing. And about the culture, very interesting that we had a way of understanding the game up till Luis Aragonés, just before Pep Guardiola, really. 2006, 2008, everything changed there. When Luis Aragonés becomes the national manager, he starts bringing all these people that can play short midfielders against the trend, because he was the Porto of Mourinho and the Chelsea of Mourinho, what was happening at the time.
A lot of football at that time, I found it quite hard to watch, because it was all these, 1 meter 80 midfielders, and a lot of running around.
The interesting thing, Tim, is that now that in the Premier League 4 or 8 games they've been playing that way, they're all saying, that it's back to the 2000s. Wasn't that great football? It's like, what?
It really
Which
wasn't.
world were you in?
Yes, it really wasn't. I'm so grateful to that Spanish school. The little midfielder, there was no place. There was no place for that player. And then
there's so many conversations from that period that was like, we like to find the beginning of everything, a moment that tells the whole story. It doesn't work like that, obviously, but it makes it for a good story. And there was a conversation between Luis Aragonés and Xavi Hernández where he said to him, why didn't you play the way that you did in La Masia when you come to Spain? And he's like, well, you got to get it quickly to the forwards or whatever it was. And Luis Aragonés is like, what are you good at? Passing. Pass the ball. And then from that concept, to which, of course, Luis Aragonés added, is like, get into the box. Try to score. It just changed the mentality of Xavi Hernández.
Why was it Aragonés, who was a veteran at this stage?
Yeah.
Why did the change happen in comparatively late in life through him? Because it's quite an unlikely starting point, isn't it?
it makes it harder to understand when you think that before that, the dichotomy, the Menotti-Bilardo's dichotomy in Spain was Clemente and the physical football, and La Quinta del Buitre, Butragueño, and all the Real Madrid players that proposed a more glamorous way. So it's basically Luis Aragonés, the archetypical Atletico Madrid legend, went the Real Madrid way of playing that way. Why? Because he was a top coach. And then he looked around and said, what have I got?
Right.
Like, as he did at Atletico Madrid. What is the essence? Counter-attacking football, a certain way of playing. Okay, let's do that. And he, of course, was in European finals with Atletico Madrid, was the manager of Atletico Madrid in different eras. And with the Spanish, what have we got? A lot of short players that can play very well. Let's put them together. In that period, in the northeast, in Catalonia, Pep Guardiola convinced Barcelona to put him as a manager in 2008. But Spain had already won the European Championships, so that had no influence on Pep Guardiola. Had no influence on it. And what Pep Guardiola was doing is bringing with him, this has been told many times, but the fantastic philosophy of Johan Cruyff, and I'm not talking football, which was the question, why not? That's what Johan Cruyff has left us. Why not? So why not do it that way? Why not try it that way? Oh, it hasn't been done. Or this is not the way we do it. And he went like, why not? Because he thought this is what the Johan Cruyff, Rinus Michel, Miró, Dalí, Gaudí, these people in Catalonia, architects, creators, they all been asking themselves for 100 years. And he picked on that. He said, why not? And created this new way of playing that, of course, by being successful, even though it was like 1 point out of 6 in the first 2 games, by being successful, everybody wanted to copy. And of course, Spain took advantage of it. But it was a Real Madrid man, Del Bosque, who thought, yeah, okay, can we mix? Can we have, Busquets, but also Xabi Alonso in the middle, an extra midfielder, an extra holding midfielder? It worked. And then success came. And now we've been embracing that culture, saying, listen, we come from somewhere. We come from this. Can we recover that, modernize it, and then move on with the times? And we're still at the vanguard of it.
You were La Furia, the Fury. It doesn't make any sense now, does it? That change in footballing identity has been so drastic and so quick.
Only winning allows you to do that.
Right. Yes.
Because it was the way to go. But as soon as we started losing, we got to Brazil and we failed because Del Bosque thinks, this is not the team I want to take to Brazil, but I've got to because they won so much. Let's take them out in the sun for the last time. And it was a failure. But from then on, it was like, see, that's not the way. And we had to remind everyone, no, it has been the way. This wasn't the perfect group of people, but let's try again. And I think with Luis de la Fuente, comes through the ranks of the national side of the federation, players that he knows. He's introduced the ability to do all that the golden generation had, plus more, plus dynamism, plus physicality, plus pressure high, plus a lot of things that makes us still, a great nation to watch.
Yeah, I think we're all mummy's boys, so you don't have to apologise for wanting to be on telly for your mum. And I thought the way that you allowed Unai Emery's, and I'm saying it properly now because I'm learning from you, Unai Emery's mother to speak for herself without any sort of narrative interjection, I thought was very telling. And she clearly very important, very, very important part in his footballing development. She would almost claim that it was me what done it. Anyway, that aside, it's really important.
No, let me stop there for a second, just very quickly, because that was on the back of a mistake I did on the Messi book. There was not enough female voices, and at the time I did it in 2015. I didn't realize, perhaps influenced by the fact that I was surrounded by men telling me about football, men playing football, men writing about football. And I started my career, if you like, as a football chairman at the time, and then little by little I realized, hold on a second, we've just haven't allowed women to talk and to tell their story. And then since then, I make a clear conscious to find the the female parts of a man or the female parts of his story to help me tell the story. And of course, Unai's mother, who goes to swim every single day in Irun, it's like she's got to be in it. And I wanted to put bits here and there, and I thought, no, she's telling me those words that she told me. She's telling me, let me tell my own story, man. So then I let her just talk in a monologue.
And by the way, in case you've just tuned in, Guillem Balagué, the Spanish football correspondent and writer, author of so many great biographies on football, is our guest. I do urge you, if you can, to join the WhatsApp channel as well to keep up with the Brazilian Shirt Name podcast. And remember, tomorrow it's live and direct with the Global Soccer Interactive, where you can join in the conversation as well. But there's so much to talk to Guillem about. Let's not waste time, because today, you see, we just touched on the culture, maybe even the soul of Spanish football in the way that Tim put it, in the way that you answered. And today, we hear the response from the La Liga boss saying that this much dreaded and much repulsed or repelled by football fans proposed matchup of was it Atletico and Barcelona? Villarreal indeed. Talking of Unai Emery, in Miami of all places. It's been now abandoned. The idea that they were going to play this one-off La Liga fixture in Miami has been abandoned, and it might have repercussions. I don't doubt whether the idea of doing that has gone away. As you know, these things don't necessarily gone away until they've proved without a doubt that they can't make money out of it. So no doubt the idea will resurface, if not in Spain, in other countries, and then it will allow Spain to go back to the drawing board as well. But what is your take on this? So first of all, La Liga surely is at fault for even allowing these two teams to contemplate going overseas for one of its fixtures. What is their thinking?
Be ready, because I want to hear what you both think as well. It's easy what they were thinking. They were thinking, with two clubs that agreed to do it, that the way to evolve the competition, that is, in a capitalist world in which leagues are there to earn money, to then pay for wages and so on. The next step was, you cannot compete with the Premier League in certain things, but there is a gap in the market, if you like, which is, how about if we take a game abroad, which, by the way, as we know, the NFL and the NBA do, and nobody says that it affects the integrity of the competition. So I completely agree with the idea. Because what are we going to do? We're actually telling the whole world to be a fans of La Liga and buy the T-shirts and consume La Liga and pay for the television rights, etc. But don't you ever think that we're going to take a game to you? Because where are you? You're in the other side of the world. And I'm thinking, why not? I'm thinking, why not try that thing? Why not just go and see what happens? And by the way, there is a discussion in Spain. The debate hasn't been this subtle, because at the moment it's all like, wow, La Liga, wow, terrible thing, blah, blah, blah. And the fans, of course, any fan that will listen to this, because fans are the most conservative people in football. And it has to be. That's what brings tradition, and it's the love to your club, and you don't want anything to change, etc. But so when they hear this, they probably will go mad, and I'm going to lose, 1 million followers or whatever. But they are also fans in the other side of the world. The problem that La Liga had, and this was not stopped by La Liga or Barcelona or Villarreal, it was stopped by Relevant, who, of course, started looking around and realized that the fans are against it. The players are against it. The players who don't raise their voice for anything. They don't raise their voice for Gaza or anything. Mm-hmm. And then they raise their voice because they hadn't been told, it's a good reason, by the way, they hadn't been told anything by La Liga about this game. Does it affect their insurance? Would it be within the limit of 72 hours rest? Who's going to earn the money? Is this going to happen every year? Who chooses the teams that are going to go there? There was no answers. There were a lot of questions, no answers. So with the fans against it, with the players against it, with all the clubs apart from Barcelona and Villarreal against it, with the media against it, because the media, smell where or sense where the wind goes, and it's like fans hate it. We're not going to go against that. With all of that, Relevant said, "Oh, and the fact that they were about to sell on the 21st of October, whenever it was, yesterday, I think, or today, they were going to start to pre-sell tickets, and the game had not been confirmed because they still needed Common Ball and the United States Federation and FIFA to confirm, which they were going to. They had promised Relevant to say yes. But with all that and the uncertainty, Relevant said, not this way. La Liga didn't give enough information. That the players are now coming out and saying, you know what? It's not that we were against it. It's the way we were treated. So I said when, Tim was going like this, when, it's going to happen again, because this is not the end of the story. I hope it's La Liga, the first competition that plays a game abroad, because then it'd be everybody else, including the Premier League. Richard Masters, at the head of the Premier League, saying, no way we're going to ever do that. Richard, you're not always going to be there. And there will be a time when it makes a lot of sense to the American owners to actually do that. Now, all this is very controversial because today everybody's celebrating that Tebas has failed. But in fact, it's the fifth time that he tries and he's never been so close. And what trend are you seeing here? It's getting closer.
Getting closer.
And closer.
I have to radically disagree for all of the conservative reasons that you would expect. I think this is the bridge that must not be crossed, because the idea of a club for me, it's with you at Biggleswade, it's to represent that community, and that's the essence. And all right, you can be a fan on the other side of the world, but the real thing is happening at Villarreal, and once they become global franchises, they are just then the playthings of American billionaires. But anyway, I know what is.
Anyway, if we can discuss this for a second, because so Barcelona only belongs to the season ticket holders that are local that can go to the games, or Barcelona is a universal global brand, if you want to call it that.
It's both, but it belongs to the people who've built it up over years and years and years, and you can come and join it, but you're not the essence. You're an add-on. But I know what has induced you into this grotesque error, and it's something I'm obviously with respect. But a huge difference, I think, between English and Spanish football culture. I remember I knew this fella from the Asturias, and he was just an Asturias fanatic. It was Asturias this, it's a region of Spain. Asturias this, Asturias that, Asturias. So I said, well, what football team do you support? Is it Oviedo? And he said, no, it's Barcelona. Well, how? You've just bored me for hours talking about Asturias. We said, yeah, but they never win. Whereas the English football culture has more roots, has more. How can we explain this? In a place like Spain, which is so regional, how can we explain this centralization and the fact that the game doesn't seem to have the depth of roots that it does in England?
I have to do it with one sentence. Football in Spain is a hobby, and in England is a lifestyle. So as lifestyle, you actually want to buy the 3 shirts, want to be part of it, want to be in the community, want to see the games, want to, and as a hobby, it's just another sport or another part of your life. And that's why there is not so many Spanish fans traveling away. There is a bunch, and there's more and more. And to be honest, against the perception of Florentino Perez, there's more and more young people joining in with their own intentions within football, but they like traveling, and it's easy to travel, so they perhaps join in more often than not going away, but generally it's a very small percentage because you got things to do at the weekend. You may watch the game in the pub or with your mates, but in England, I've just got a message from Billy and Dave, who live in Calonja, Costa Brava, northeast of Spain, Aston Villa fans, who are on the way to whoever they're playing today by car, and they do that every away game in Europe. They go away. This is a Thursday. They play Thursdays now, of course. They both have a job, but their life goes around the football club. So I completely get that in England, people won't even contemplate the idea of a game abroad. But I think there's a wave that will take everyone, and things will change. And why not?
Could I add my tuppence into this? First of all,
How many shillings is that? Is the only one who remembers shillings?
well, a tuppence is a sixth of a shilling. You can work out the maths, okay?
No, I can't. I can't do that. No.
You can. You try.
What a strange pre-decimal island we were.
Yeah, we were. I fall between you and Tim with regards to, because you asked for both our responses with regards to playing fixtures overseas. First of all, Tim, I'm not sure if it's accurate that Spanish football doesn't have that roots that you compare England with. It's not the same, but there's a passage in Guillem's book when Unai Emery wins or gets Almeria promoted from the Spanish Segunda division, the second division. You read that passage, it's as emotional for Unai Emery, for the footballers, for the people of that area as...
Oh, Dotun, everybody loves a win.
Of course they do, but they love a promotion, first time ever promotion, and they did it by this bloke who was asked...
How many people were Manchester City getting in the third division? Is there 100%. Any club in Spain that could compete?
Atletico Madrid, when they went to the second division 2 years, really. Deportivo La Coruña. But yeah,
I'm not arguing with Guillem's point that football in Spain is a hobby. I'm not saying that they are passionate like that, but they do have the roots. They do have the roots, different roots. But going back to this fixture overseas, it is difficult. I understand your point, Tim, but at the same time, you're conflicted because you often say, look, bring some of that talent over here so that we can watch it. If not,
that's called the national teams. That's what the national teams are there for.
But hold on. But I'm just saying, clubs are like national teams if you support them. But you are passionate about saying, you loan out in Brazil, for example, all this great talent. Come on, give them a chance to come back to us. And you're right in terms of national teams or whatever. But it is still arguing Guillem's point that everybody across the world deserves to see all the great players.
Actually, Doctor, you made a very big point.
It is a good point.
Because the World Cups, national teams, are played all over the world. And these are national teams. So how many Spanish fans can go to Russia or Brazil or Qatar to see Spain? Not many. It's football taken to different parts of the world. So if we do it with the national side,
there's that word that surely you understand from Biggleswade. That word is club.
Because
still, you've got a team that represents all those things that you're talking about, and we are a community club at Biggleswade United that represents the club. But at the same time, why cut our wings? Why not fly all over, and even perhaps with the 250 that we get in every game,
all right.
get them all on a bus and go to...
You can have a competition for that. That's fine.
I agree.
I agree. You can have like a Club World Cup for that.
That's the answer.
But the league structure.
That's the answer.
I don't think you say that distorts the league, right? You're saying that it distorts the league. That's another fundamental.
Mine isn't even about it distorting the league, but you said the footballers were happy that they were not informed. Yeah. What about the other clubs? What about the other potential clubs and all of that?
Let's go with the distortion of the league, of the competition itself. So we're saying that the NBA and the NFL obviously are distorted as well because they play one game abroad.
Exactly. But why are we seeing them as references? It's a different thing.
It's a national competition, a club competition that plays in the nation.
They're more or less the only one in the world, don't they? They are world competitions anyway. Football
when we had 200 competitions in 30 years' time, then it would make a lot of sense. We got the references we've got right now. But
they're not the references. I think the references, sorry to cut you, I think the reference go before that. If you go back a few decades and you see Muhammad Ali taking world championship boxing to Kinshasa or to Manila, this is where it comes from. It's easier to do it when it's a one-on-one sport. I don't think the references.
Indeed.
I think
they're not clubs.
Sorry, they're not clubs, but they're the ones. But remember what the responses were in Africa to Muhammad Ali, the greatest boxer in the world, coming to Africa. James Brown, the greatest soul father in the world, going to Africa for Festac in 1977.
Yeah, but they're not going to go there, are they? They're going to go to the United States.
But this is the problem, Tim. This is a problem. If it is about what Guillem is saying, taking football to the world, which has been deprived of it.
It's about going where you can make the most money.
If La Liga had taken this fixture to Africa, it would have been controversial, but I bet you they would have gotten away with it. The response in Africa would have been phenomenal. And also, Africa is only just across the Mediterranean from Spain. You know, it would have been a completely, and you are sharing a World Cup in a few years' time with Africa. It would have been a completely different thing. But
take a cup competition there. Great.
Which they already are, going to Saudi and to Qatar.
But they always go to the money, don't they? They always go to the money. It's not like take it to Africa.
Don't be naive. What is this? It's a business. It's a business, of course it is.
It's a tightrope between business and culture, and I'm trying to keep it one side of the line.
You're pushing it to what it was, and completely agree with you. And the fans do exactly the same. I'm going with it, whatever it is, and I want to be part of it. And I'll tell you a little exclusive. I was going to be part of that game in terms of coverage, so I was so excited.
Declare an interest.
I knew Tim was going to say that.
In terms of affecting the league, Barcelona played the first 3 games of this season away because they had to prepare the Camp Nou, which they haven't been able to open yet.
Special circumstances.
But isn't that distorting the league? Another way of distorting the league is using Real Madrid TV to put pressure to the referees to affect their decisions. Doesn't that distort the picture and the competition as well? Using your authority and your power within La Liga and the Spanish football to affect decisions of referees. Doesn't that distort the competition?
Yeah, but everything in that case is distorted. You know, the fact that I've got more...
So then leave it. Distorted by just taking us away for a game. That's just a game.
But it would be remiss of us as football fans, football professionals, institutions and otherwise to just allow the culture of ordinary people, which football is a central part of, to simply be distorted any which way. There are distortions.
Ordinary people in the States.
Well, no, but
no.
Let us be part of that conversation. Let us all be part of that conversation. I think Tim has a point that if you're a fan of the club, you're perhaps more part of the conversation with regards to your own club's future, but also there is a central part, which is conversation about La Liga, conversation about Spanish football, conversation about Spanish culture and the soul of Spanish culture, etc. Those conversations are just being brushed aside to say, let's go after the money, which is fine if it's a separate competition. But if it's a separate competition, you do whatever you like. But you can't drag us, you can't distort our lives just because of the distortion that is allowable to a certain extent. No. We've got to resist that. Anyway, back to the book. And it was great. It was great, by the way, with my football analogy, to see that Unai Emery's, was it his father or his grandfather? His nickname was Pajarito, which
his grandfather was the first goalkeeper to concede a goal in La Liga.
Wow!
And it was a goal scored by Espanyol, and he conceded the first goal. Yeah, he was a goalkeeper. Al Pajarito, the little bird.
Yes,
Pajarito. Nickname to a goalkeeper.
It's not a very inspiring name for a goalkeeper, is it? You don't want a little bird in goal, do you?
Because he wasn't big. He wasn't great. It must have been 178, 179. So, but he jumped like a bird.
My oldest brother, who Tim has met down the phone line, his nickname till today, if he went to Nigeria, he hasn't been to Nigeria in 60 years. If he went to Nigeria today, all our relatives, my uncles and everything, they'll still call him Pajarito. They call him Pajarito because my family were a boxing fanatics. And when my older brother was born, the one Nigerian world champion at that, I can't remember what weight it was, a guy called Hogan Bassi. He was about to fight a Mexican called Pajarito, or we call him Pajarito, obviously. And immediately my brother who was born at that time got the nickname Pajarito till today. When I went to Nigeria in 1978, everybody called me, because they hadn't seen me for 12 years at that point. Everybody thought I was Pajarito. Nobody remembered Pajarito had a younger brother whose nickname was Davy Moore, because Hogan Bassi happened to be boxing a Welshman when I was born. But anyway, just to say, I was quite pleased to see the name Pajarito come up there. But you said, we talked about the biography part at length. There's a lot more to say about it. It's a fascinating read, particularly when you talk about how Unai Emery gets across his philosophy very easily when he goes from one club to another. They understand exactly what he wants. And crucially, you'd have thought that this wasn't rocket science, Tim, but crucially, all the players get to make a contribution to the conversation, tactically and otherwise. He wants to hear from all the players. He doesn't just give out a sermon and say, this is how it's going to be. They can also contribute and disagree.
But they're not. It's not a democracy. They can talk if they want, and they will be open. He's open to listen.
Of course.
But like what has happened at Villa after five mediocre results, if you like, at the beginning of the season, where everybody was panicking, his way to continue. I mean, the answer is in the book. If you wanted to know what he was going to do, the answer is in the book, which is more of the same, more work, more hours, more training, more of the same. He wasn't like, right, guys, what do you think is wrong? No. And it's the same when during the game, you see his assistants coming in and saying something into his ear. You think he's listening. He's already decided what he's going to do next. But their job is to say, we've seen this thing or that thing, do whatever you want. But obviously, it's also not a dictatorship in terms of just, tell you what it is. He wants to hear and develop relationships. He's not one like, I don't know, Jose Mourinho, for instance, that becomes very close to not just the player, but his wife and his kids and his families, just to get the best out of the player. It's more like, I'm going to enter your body in through your head. I'm going to tell you what you have to do to be better. And then it's so demanding that, of course, it gets to a point where people cannot continue. Monchi, 2 years is like, Monchi, the director of football, is like having been there for 5 years or more. It's a lot going on there. It's like walking into NASA when you walk into Bollywood Heath. So the players feel it as well. And what he's got now, because, it's like 1 hour and a half chats with 50-minute video 3 times a week. And his English has got a bit of an accent as well. So they got to listen to all of that. Mm-hmm. The ones that are there now is because they go to the filter of, I cannot deal with this anymore. Like, Douglas Luiz. And they're there because they accept the methodology.
I'm beginning to understand why John Duran couldn't possibly stay very long.
Oh, what a story that is! What a story that is! Yeah, that's a contrast. But as he's done in the whole of his career, he got John Duran and said, "I'm going to make this guy £100 million player." And how he did it, but not just him, how the player liaison sat with John Duran one day to say, do you know that if you park your car where you just done it this morning, there's somebody else that parks there normally, and he may get upset. So do you mind? We get you this other place for you to, and like that all the time, to get into his head and trying to put it in the right place. But meeting the parents, trying to understand where it came from, long conversations between Unai and John and etc. So all that is what he does beyond the videos and beyond the training and whatever he decides on the pitch.
Last year, they came very close to eliminating Paris Saint-Germain. How far do you think that he can take them? And do you think it can possibly be a long-term project, or will the whole thing burn itself out in this spiral of workaholic nature that he has?
I spoke to sports psychologists. How long can you go on with this, spending this energy when you are in your mid-50s? And it's not long. So I don't know. He's got to adapt at some point. But meanwhile, he looks around. There is no other club better than Aston Villa for what he's doing, number one. Number two is a rise, but nobody said it was a straight upward trajectory rise. And right now, it's like this because, of course, financial fair play means that they cannot invest. And not being to invest as much means they have to do it in a different way. But look, they'll all of a sudden have got, 5 games in a row, winning. So it's still working with the weapons that he's got and at his disposal to maximize the potential of this club. And the idea is that it is a long-term thing. Yes, he senses the passion of the fans. He's got completely the trust of the owner, who he met on Wednesday, the day of the presentation of the book. Couldn't have chosen another day, so he couldn't be there. But yeah, that he's in a good place, and I think everybody else agrees this is a special time in the history of this old club that is Aston Villa.
Talking about him burning himself out, how on earth do you find the time to write these books in a second language? And do you have a next one lined up? Do you have ideas for the next one going around your head?
Organization is the key to everything. Usage of the time, that's the other secret. And yes, but he doesn't know it yet. I tried to get Emma Hayes to do something with me. And she said, but I've got a book out 2 years ago, so no, it doesn't make sense. Okay, maybe in the future. But I've got somebody else who it's out of the Premier League, but will get into the Premier League at some point. But I've got to convince him, and he's one of the biggest names in world football. I'd be fascinated to work with him. But he doesn't know it yet, so let's wait a little bit longer.
Well, in that case, he and I share a common, lack of knowledge. But there you go. Guillem, it's been amazing speaking to you. There's just so much more we can talk about. But we'll do it again. This is the first one. Just remind everybody that the book is called Rise of the Villans. And Tim hasn't even displayed his black country accent once. What? He's been on his best behavior.
I did the Rosebud. No, when you
said about the Rosebud, and did we, the conclusion of the Rosebud, did we find out what he meant in the end?
No, I think we did. The enigma of Citizen Kane, the enigma of Emery.
I shouldn't really do a black country accent, should I? Let's leave it there. Get out, mate. It's been amazing. Good luck on the book. And everybody, remember, me and Tim are back tomorrow at 4 p.m. with the Global Soccer Interactive. Join you then. Subscribe. Give it a thumbs up and all of that. And we will meet again, surely.
Get in touch with the Brazilian Shirt Name Podcast on Twitter at BrazilShirtPod, or you can email us BrazilianShirtNamePod@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, rate and tell a friend. The Brazilian Shirt Name Podcast is an 1129 production.